Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
Hey everyone, welcome into another episode of The Financially Free Investor. Today, I'm going to talk about short-term rentals. A lot of people refer to them as Airbnbs, VRBOs. Basically, they're mini hotels. So if you guys have listened to a few other episodes, maybe I'm not the guy that's all about short-term rentals. I think that placed in the right market at the right point in time, you could do phenomenally well with them. For the most part, though, our entire rental portfolio has been built up from good, consistent, long-term rentals. And here's why. Right now, the Airbnb market is crashing. Why do I say that? So I got this email from AirDNA. And if you guys don't know what AirDNA is, you can go ahead and Google it. But basically, the short version is it is the company that tracks rental demand, average daily rents for short-term rentals for Airbnb. They're correlated. So here's the article. The article said occupancy drops to 60% nationwide. And here's what's interesting. For everyone I've talked to that does short-term rentals, that does a really good job at it, it's all about the average daily rental that you can get, right? Like the same thing as a hotel. You go to one hotel, it's $200 a night versus the other hotel is $500 a night. It's all revenue. So anyways, if you compare that with a long-term rental where let's say the rent is $3,000 a month, well, that's $100 a night times 30 nights, right? So here's the article. Our occupancy came down in May 2022 as supply increases outpaced demand growth. Available listings hit an all-time record high of 1.34 million, up 24.7% from last year, with 84,000 new listings added in May 2022. U.S. short-term rental supply growth surges to meet rising demands. So the interesting thing is, they say here, U.S. short-term rental demand showed no weakness in May, with nights stayed up another 17.9% compared to last year, plus 26% versus 2019. New bookings were also healthy in May, topping 17.1 million nights booked during the month, which were up 2% compared to the last two consecutive months of being below 2021 levels. However, spending on services like travel has remained strong, but oil prices have been increasing rapidly over the past month and surpassed $120 per barrel over the last week. Further increases in oil prices could slow the growth of summer travel season as high gas prices combined with high inflation reduce consumers' ability to spend on trips. The strong dollar could also impact travel in the U.S. this summer as it makes travel to the U.S. more expensive, curtailing inbound travel to the US, and travel overseas cheaper, meaning people are going to travel out there. So here's the interesting thing. Occupancy, which is the lifeblood of rental real estate, of cash flow real estate, of short-term rental real estate, is down. It has plunged. So just to give you an idea, on all of our long-term rentals, which most of our portfolio is long-term rentals, we, for the most part, are like 98, 99% occupied. Meaning there is very few circumstances where we have a vacancy and we do not have someone living in the units. So for me to see 60% occupancy, that's crazy. But keep in mind that they do get higher nightly rents than we do with long-term rents. However, and this is the interesting thing that we're going to see play out hopefully over the next few years, supposedly we're 5 million housing units short in supply in the United States right now. Well, over 1 million are short-term rentals. Well, no wonder that we're short on housing supply. We had 2008, a lot of builders went out of business. And now all of a sudden we've got this short-term rental craze that these houses, people are buying them on 10% down loans and, they're furnishing them and then they're renting them out on Airbnb, VRBO, all these other places because some people want that experience versus being in a hotel. Other people definitely want to be in a hotel. Not right or wrong, it's just different. But at the end of the day, the important thing to think about is your local economy, right? If you buy a short-term rental, here are the risks. The risks are we will continue to see people jump on the bandwagon of short-term rentals because everyone is trying to get rich quick. The second thing is interest rates have gone through the roof, not only on short-term rentals, vacation homes, but on everything, especially though on second homes and vacation homes, because Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I think they see this craze that's happening and they're jacking the interest rates up there because there's more risk that borrowers are going to default. There's more risk that people aren't going to pay that. The great thing about having long-term rentals is someone is going to work every single day, 5 days a week to pay the rent to live there. That's a needed and necessary expense in someone's life. Well, traveling, we'll pick Florida or Moab or California, pick your market, but traveling is not a needed expense. That is a luxury. That is something that you do with money you have left over after paying your bills, right? Well, if the economy continues to contract, which I think it is, I think we're headed towards a recession. JP Morgan thinks we're headed towards a recession. The Fed certainly thinks we're headed towards a recession. They're jacking interest rates up to try to slow down inflation. Part of the reason I think they're doing that is so that they have interest rates to lower when we do hit the recession. So if you're buying a short-term rental right now, I would just be very cautious because there are a lot of headwinds, in my opinion, in that market. So supply is another one. If there's 3 other people in a neighborhood that are renting out houses as short-term rentals and, people are traveling to that city for business or whatnot, there's only 3 options. If someone wants to stay at a short-term rental, there's 3 options. And those are going to get, booked up pretty quickly. But if there's 300 options and, let's say there's only 10 or 15 people, then what we're going to see is we're going to see prices be pushed down a lot. So the interesting thing is, if supply continues the way it has to grow as short-term rentals continue to grow in popularity for owners and, people just think it's cool to own Airbnbs or short-term rentals, then what's that going to do to your average daily rent? Well, it's going to slow it down a lot. You're not going to have, you're not going to be getting 3, 4, 5 times the revenue that you were when there was only 3 houses in that neighborhood, because now people have options. And then it becomes a race to the bottom when there's more supply than demand. So with occupancy dropping, supply increasing, and I don't know if it's, the occupancy is dropping because supply is increasing because of, high gas prices and people just aren't traveling as much. I don't know. But, for the most part, this is something that you can't control. Even within long-term rentals, you can't control if 5 more houses on the street become long-term rentals. I will say though, that people seem to do what they think is going to get them rich quickest, which happens to be like flipping houses. So when the market gets hot, we see all these new flippers come into the market. When the market gets hot, like it has been, we see all these people rushing in to buy short-term rentals, when I don't think now is time to buy short-term rentals or flip unless you really know what you're doing, because I think we could see a decline in prices of 10 to 20 to 30%, just speaking here on the Wasatch Front as interest rates continue to rise, which I think they will. So right now would not be the time that I would be buying a short-term rental or buying something to put on Airbnb, unless I already had a large enough portfolio that I could weather some downside. Like I would not put my first property as an Airbnb, just because if something goes wrong, you're 100% responsible for that mortgage. So at the end of the day, I just thought this was super interesting and thought I would share this article from AirDNA from you. I'll just throw out a few more little tidbits that I found interesting. Phoenix and Scottsdale in Arizona had the highest increase with over 6,000 additional listings available this year. That's a 39.9% increase, almost 40% increase from last year. Houston, Texas had a 55.7% increase in just 1 year. They went from 10,000 listings to 16,000 listings. So the question I have is, are that many more people actually booking short-term rentals or traveling to Houston versus 2 years ago or a year ago when, they had 10,000 listings? And that's the interesting thing, right? You think about long-term rentals and not everyone's rushing to buy, 6,000 more long-term rentals that weren't there before, because a lot of these houses someone lived in and then they're being converted to Airbnbs. Here's some other interesting things for this article. The largest year-over-year occupancy declines were in the following markets. Puerto Rico, they're down almost 21% year over year. Joshua Tree, California, 23%. The Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, 21%. Coachella Valley, 21% down. Lake Tahoe, 20% down. Broken Bow, Oklahoma, down 19.7%. So, and I talked to a buddy who lives in Moab full time. He's a real estate professional down there. And he said the same thing. He said, man, like, a lot of these people who don't know how to professionally operate these are getting crushed right now because average daily rents are all over the map. And if you don't have dynamic pricing to be able to get you the most bookings for the most amount of money, and you don't know how to manipulate that software and manipulate the market, like you as an individual owner are potentially getting crushed, which will create an opportunity, unfortunately. But guys, and this is why it's so important to get with someone who knows what they're doing, especially short-term rentals. The ones that we had a professional manager manage them. That's partially true. The one in Moab, we did ourselves, but honestly, we netted what we would have netted had we had a professional manager do it, just looking at what they got versus what we got. So here's some other notable things. Desitin, Florida grew by 30% as far as their number of listings. Oh no, this is average daily rents. So of the 50 short-term rental markets that AirDNA looked at, average daily rents grew the most in Desitin, Florida, followed by Santa Rosa, Rosemary Beach, Florida, and Maui, Hawaii. Other notable markets with high growth included New York, Boston, Massachusetts, and Chicago, Illinois. So it's really interesting. The market that, you are looking at, I would say hop on and do your research before buying an Airbnb and see what projected occupancy is, what projected average daily rents are, and really know all of those risk factors and be open to those potential downsides that can come in investing. Because last thing I want you guys to do is buy a bad deal that ends up, bankrupting you or crushing you or making you lose a ton of money, because that's not why we invest, which is why I've stuck for the most part to boring long-term rentals, duplexes, fourplexes, little houses, 3, 4, or 5 bedroom houses, nothing major, nothing over 2,500 square feet, because, if a tenant trashes it, by the way, it's super expensive to fix up. And it's why we really have steered away from short-term rentals, because you can't control if a municipality decides in one city council meeting, hey, we're banning short-term rentals across the board. You can't control any of that. Sure, you can go lobby and do all of that, but they're not going to ban long-term rentals unless it's an HOA. And even HOAs, they still let long-term rentals happen 99% of the time. So with that being said, guys, I thought it was interesting that occupancy has plunged. I think part of that reason is because supply has gone up and the demand hasn't followed it. So I think gone are the days in some markets where you can just crush it on Airbnbs. And some markets, I think it's totally true. You can just be very careful in those markets and don't make knee-jerk decisions. So with that being said, guys, make it a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.